What a coincidence! Just as the woman was walking home, she came across Mary again. At this time, Mary was hungry, vomiting, and diarrhea. This is often the case. The similarity of the encounter creates empathy between the women. She kindly went up to her and asked, and helped Mary buy water and food. After a brief conversation, Mary gradually lowered her guard. Seeing that Mary had nowhere to go, the woman had to take her home first. Unlike her irritable husband, her daughter seemed warm and welcoming, although Mary rarely met strangers, but she could sense that the woman in front of her was a good person. Gradually, they talked more and more. Mary also talked about her own experiences. When she was young, her parents had taken her to Africa for a trip, but she was in a car accident. In the end, she was the only one who survived, but unfortunately, she was found by the local mob. Since then, Mary has been in prison. She lived a life of darkness. Hearing what happened to Mary, the woman couldn't help but lament. There are really people in this world who are less fortunate than myself, but she wondered how Mary had escaped. But Mary did not tell her in detail. She said that by chance she was saved by a rich man from abroad. She even paid a lot of money to buy herself. That's how she escaped from Africa. When she said this, Mary's eyes revealed gratitude, although Mike was outwardly torturing her, but it was also a punishment for her. Mary decided to take it in stride, and with that, she said goodbye to the woman. Meanwhile, Mike realizes that it wasn't Mary who brought the coffee. He realizes something is wrong. He asks Mary where she is. The maid did not dare to say anything about this, but judging from his reaction, Mike knew it was all his mother's doing. Then he went to Ruth and questioned her, but Ruth didn't panic and said it was just a servant. I told the housekeeper to send him away. Now Mike was in a hurry. He told his men to look for Mary. He even went to the city to look for her himself, but nothing was found. For Mary's sudden departure, Mike actually felt a bit lost. When he returned to the mansion, he grabbed the housekeeper. Who gave you the right to get rid of Mary? Ruth rushed out to relieve the situation. This was her order. She gave the order for Michael not to give the housekeeper a hard time, but Mike didn't care about that. Tell the housekeeper to behave himself if he couldn't get Mary back. If he couldn't find Mary, then the housekeeper didn't have to work at the mansion. But it was Mike's perverse behavior. It made Ruth even more suspicious. Could her son be in love with Mary? Mike was sitting in the mansion, a little lost, but the next moment a familiar figure approached him. Mike took a look. Mary actually came back of her own accord. What shocked him even more was that Mary opened her mouth and said, "I'm back because I owe you a lot. I will not go anywhere until it is paid back." And the stubbornness that Mary showed without thinking seems to be melting Mike's cold heart. Rich man pays millions for African slave girl, but let the woman sleep in the cemetery every night. She was shivering in the minus 20-degree temperature, while the rich man blows the air conditioning in his car. He gets out of his car every 10 minutes to check on her. Once he finds the woman asleep, he wakes her up on purpose. After a full night of torment, he made the girl walk back to the mansion again, even though it was still a few dozen kilometers away. But the girl did not dare to say anything. She was tortured to atone for her sins. She finally made it back to the mansion, but she didn't have time to rest with cold water to wake herself up. Then the day began. First, she went to the bathroom and cleaned every wall, and then put on a clean towel to dry the walls. Even the glass is not allowed to have a little dust. If Mary didn't do this right, not even let her eat dinner under such intense work. Even the girl who was a maid can't stand it, cannot help but complain about the mansion and the rules are too much. But it's no wonder, because the owner of the house was a strange one. Mary knew exactly what she was talking about with Mike. However, the next words made her sad again. The girl said that Mike had always been like that. He was very strict with the people around him, but only his two younger sisters were favored. But not long ago, the second sister died suddenly in Africa. This incident hit him very hard. When he came back from Africa, he became more cold than before. But at that time, the girl did not know. Mary and the second sister's death had a lot to do with. Hearing this, Mary inevitably some sadness, but the maids didn't notice. They were still gossiping about the mansion and about Michael's father. The man died suddenly many years ago. It was a great blow to Michael. The butler suddenly called her. The maid was about to go there, but she accidentally dropped the photo on the floor. Now she was completely baffled. It meant a lot to Mike. The main thing is that the picture frame, it was handmade. If someone found out about it, I'm afraid she'd have to be fired. The kind-hearted Mary didn't think much of it. She told the girl not to worry. She would find a way to fix the picture frame. After the girl left, Mary looked at the picture in her hand. She knew that Mike was not to blame for all this, losing his most important family member one after another. I'm afraid anyone else would have been like him. Sure enough, the third sister was in pain. To distract herself, after her sister's death, she went on a trip, but she couldn't get over it. She often called Mike. She cried and said that her sister was so nice. Who was so cruel to kill her? When she thought of her sister's painful face, Mike's anger rose. Mary is restoring the picture frame. Then Mike pushed in the door. Mary hurriedly hid it behind her, looking at the murderer of her sister. Mike was furious. He asked her why she didn't go to work. Seeing something unusual about Mary, Mike asked her what she was holding. What a coincidence. And then the maid came to the rescue. Did you find the tools you asked Mary to find? I'm in a hurry. Mike saw this and was relieved of his doubts. After he left, the girl looked at the restored picture frame. She couldn't help but thank Mary. If there is a need for him in the future, he'll definitely help. At the same time, Mike was still torn, but the attitude towards outsiders is different. Whenever he thinks of his sister. Mike will show a tender side. He's sorting through his sister's belongings. He's about to turn on his computer and watch a video of his sister's life. Mary came in with coffee. He saw the book his sister had left behind. Mary can't help but call out the woman's name. Mike stared at her coldly. You have no right to talk about my sister. If it wasn't for you, she wouldn't have been killed. This may seem like an outrageous statement, but it was also what Mary had in mind. He blamed himself for everything. When Mary left, Mike watched the video his sister left behind. It just happened to capture the events of the day. Mary came over to deliver the cake, said the gang leader sent her, trying to smooth things over. See here, Mike made the worst decision, and it made him miss the truth. And then, in a fit of rage, he found Mary. He grabbed her and headed out. When they came out, they met a rich girl coming to the mansion, but Mike didn't give her a second thought. Took Mary to her sister's grave so that Mary could see the place, the woman who was so good to her, and then Mary gets herself killed. What right does she have to live in the world now? But he wasn't the only one who was sad. Mary was also very guilty. If the woman hadn't encouraged her, Mary would have died in Africa, although she is still alive now. And why is it not a punishment for her? She was about to fall into the grave. Then Mike grabbed her. Since Mary returned to the mansion of her own accord, Mike had been shaken. There was even a moment he wished that Mary had nothing to do with his sister's death, but he could never have imagined. The video he'd seen during the day had a second half. It clearly showed that when Mary left, the woman did not eat the cake. Instead, she threw it in the trash. She had already thought that the ringleader was up to no good, and even used Mary. But even though she thought of all the possibilities, but she had thought of everything but the person next to her. Her colleague was the eyes of the ringleader. She dripped the poison into her coffee when she wasn't expecting it, and the woman who came back didn't know what to do. She drank the coffee in one go. That's what led to the tragedy. So it has nothing to do with Mary. As for when Mike will know the truth, and how to compensate Mary after knowing the truth, let's look forward to the next episode. She has to greet the master 2 hours earlier every day and hold the freshest roses. And just because she was a few minutes late, the rich man took away the flowers. To punish the girl, he took her to a cemetery dozens of kilometers away and then made her walk back to the mansion while Mike drove the limousine. Behind her in his limousine, staring coldly at her. It took 5 hours to get back to the mansion. No time to rest. Mary was called by the butler again. She was ordered to clean up Mike's study, but the intensity of the work, Mary was inevitably exhausted. She looked out the window. When will true freedom come? Just as the maid came into the room. Although the Mac family was aloof, but the maids were very united. She knew Mary hadn't been resting well lately. She told her to find a place to sleep in secret. She was given the cleaning job, but to avoid unnecessary trouble. Mary could only insist on it. While they were chatting, Mary took a turn for the worse, to talk to the woman about Mike's father, asking what kind of man he was. This makes the maid wonder, why suddenly mention the dead old rich man? Mary excused this to see a group photo, that is why some curiosity. But judging from Mary's expression, I'm afraid this is not so simple. It turns out that last night Mary was dragged to the cemetery. Just after dawn, a mysterious old man appeared. She took a good look. It was Mike's father in the photo. Mary subconsciously called out the old rich man's name. Now the man was a bit confused. He didn't expect to meet the family's maid, but he quickly recovered. Then he said in a pleading tone, don't tell anyone that he is still alive. Seeing Mary's hesitation, and Mike was already in the neighborhood, there was no time to think. The rich man agreed to meet at 3 p.m. He'll tell Mary everything. Just help him save his life now. And then he turned around and left. The innocent Mary didn't think much of it, and did not tell Mike about it. So that's why she asked the maid about the old rich man. But at that moment, Mike suddenly came to the door. He heard them talking about their dead father. Mike instantly became grim. He sent the maid away first. Then he slowly approached Mary. You have no right to talk about my father. Remember, you're just a slave. If I ever catch you talking about my family again, I will not let you off lightly. And Mary was still hesitant whether to tell Mike the truth. The old rich man was still alive. From the servants, Mary learned that, although Mike was indifferent to others, but he always had a knot in his heart. He even kept all the toys from his childhood. Mike was just 8 years old at the time, and his father was too busy working all day. He didn't have time to spend with him. When he was leaving, Rich was still reassuring that he would come back after the meeting to be with him. Little did he know that this separation would be the last time he would see his father. But for the young boy, father's love was very important. He spent the whole day in the yard to guard, hoping to see his father's return. But many days passed in a row, and then he heard from his mother. Tell Mike not to wait. The rich man had died in an accident. This incident was a big blow to Mike. He will never forget how to survive all these years. Since then, Mike took his family very seriously, and never doubted what his mother said. Always thought his father was long dead. Apparently, the old rich man had a big secret, but he didn't expect to get Mary involved. It's almost time for the appointment. Mary planned to meet with the rich man first, and then tell Mike about it. And as promised, Rich showed up in the garden on time. Just as they were about to speak, the butler at the mansion suddenly mentioned Mary hadn't seen anyone for half an hour. What a coincidence. Mike overheard this. He was worried that Mary had disappeared again. He was about to go out to look for her when he ran into Ruth. He asked his mother if she'd seen Mary. Ruth already has a strong opinion of Mary. The last time she told the housekeeper to get rid of Mary, she made Mike unhappy. Thinking about it, she said in a sly voice, since when is the housekeeper so important? Do I have to keep an eye on her for you? But Mike wasn't going to reveal Mary's true identity, and he didn't bother to argue with Ruth. Then he walked out of the mansion, and he saw Mary's figure, but there was another person next to her, and the two of them don't even notice. Mary asked why she hadn't met her family, but there seemed to be a big hidden agenda here. The rich man kept repeating that he was sorry for his son, but not yet. Somehow he has a great deal of trust in Mary. Just as he's about to say why, Mike was slowly approaching. Then he saw the familiar face. It was his father, who had died long ago. Now Mike was completely baffled.